Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
No, sir, I didn't think it polite to listen.
That's a pity. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I leave science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, Lane, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Where are they?
Here, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your books that on Thursday evening when Lord Sherman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it, Lane, that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne?
I attribute it to the first-rate quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir, although I have had very little experience of it myself. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't serve as a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Earnest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary, in good society, to take some form of refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
You got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid, never speak to one of them.
By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire, yes. Hello, why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta. And Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
That is all very well, my dear fellow. But I do not think that Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way that you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I've come up to town to propose to Gwendolen.
To propose? I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
There's nothing romantic about proposing. It's very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing at all romantic about a definite proposal. One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. You see, the very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I will certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that. The divorce court was made specially for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there is no use speculating about that. Divorces are made in heaven. Please, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all the time.
Well, that is an entirely different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And quite good bread and butter is too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you are going to eat at all. You act as if you are married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it right.
Oh, that's nonsense.
No, it isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And, in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily?
Lane,
I don't know anyone by that name as far as I can remember.
Lane, bring me the cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
You mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up at the moment.
Well, there's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that rather mean of you, Earnest, I must say. However, now that I look at the inscription inside, I see that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside a private cigarette case. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to do.
No, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. One should read everything. Nearly half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Oh, I'm quite aware of the fact. But I do not propose to talk about modern culture with you. Isn't quite sort of the thing that one talks about in private. Just give me my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
Yes, but why does your aunt call herself Little? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear Algy, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter surely an aunt may be able to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like yours. That is absurd. Just give it back to me.
Ah, yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, in an aunt being called a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, would call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Earnest.
It isn't Earnest. It's Jack.
But you have always told me it was Earnest. I have introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You look as if your name was Earnest. In fact, you're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you saying your name isn't Earnest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. It's Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany West. I will keep that as proof if you ever attempt to deny to me or to Gwendolyn that your name is Earnest.
My name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
But that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Come, old boy, you much better have the thing out at once. I may mention I have always thought of you as being a confirmed and yet secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth is a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you reveal to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear Algy, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, under rather peculiar circumstances, and left me all the money I possess, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew, who addresses me as her uncle from of respect you could not possibly understand. She lives at my place in the country, under the supervision of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is this place in the country, might I add?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. I will tell you quite candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected as much. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire, on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you called Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't think you could even begin to understand my true motives. You are hardly serious enough. But very well. You see, Miss Cecily Cardew has addressed me...
Yes. As your uncle, you said that already.
Yes, but when one adopts the position of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. And while this can neither be said, can result in much health or happiness to excess, I have always pretended to have a brother of the name of Ernest, who lives up in town, at the Albany, and gets in the most dreadful scrapes. That is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure, and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism, my dear fellow, is not your forte. Don't try it. You'd much better leave that to a person who hasn't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a bunburyist. I was quite right saying you're a bunburyist. In fact, you're the most advanced bunburyist I ever saw in my life.
What on earth do you mean by that?
You have invented a very useful younger brother in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you choose. I have invented a dreadful permanent invalid named Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down to the country as often as I like. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I have really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
Oh, yes, I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. You really ought to be more careful. There's nothing that annoys people so much as not receiving an invitation.
You would much rather dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I have no intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. And in the second place, when I dine there, I am always treated as a member of the family, and either sit down with no woman at all, or two. And in the third place, I know perfectly well who she will sit me next to tonight. She will sit me next to Mary Faulkner, who is always flirting with her husband across the dinner table. It's not quite right, and indeed it's not even decent. And that sort of thing, it's extraordinarily on the rise in London nowadays. The amount of women here who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's simply washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a bunburyist. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I shall kill my brother. Indeed, I think I shall kill him in any case. Sis is a little too much interested in him. She's always asking me to forgive him, and that sort of thing. It's quite a bore. So, indeed, I shall kill my brother.
But why?
Because Cecily's too much interested in him. Have you not been listening?
You see, when you talk, I kind of drift off a bit. And nothing, might I add, nothing ever will induce me to part with Bunbury. And I don't think you should quite kill off your fine old brother.
I think you should part with with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
No, nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me to be extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
If a charming, sweet girl like Gwendolyn accepts me, I would never want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You seem to forget that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That is what the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Oh yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Don't try to be cynical, Algie. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it's not perfectly easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives, or creditors, ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her away for 10 minutes, you might have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolyn. May I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about their meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well indeed, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, Gwendolyn, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for development, and I tend to develop in many directions.
I am sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Arbery. I hadn't seen her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I will have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches left?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, there being no cucumbers in the market. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Arbery, who seems to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Oh, yes. I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. I've got quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman, so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a terrible disappointment, and I need not state a great bore, but I have just had a telegram saying that my friend Bunbury is dreadfully ill.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he's going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. Well, Algernon, of course, if you are obliged to be beside the bedside of Mr. Bunbury, I have nothing more to say, but I would be much obliged if you would ask him, from me, to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation. Particularly at the end of the season when one has said whatever they've had to say, which in most cases is probably not much.
I will speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can assure you that he'll be quite all right by Saturday. But you see, the music is a great deal. For if one plays bad music, then people won't talk. And if one plays good music, then people won't listen. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out, if you will kindly come with me to the next room.
That is very thoughtful of you, Algernon. I think the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I think it's so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Gwendolyn, ever since I have met you, I have loved you more than any girl I have met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has now reached the provincial pulpits, I am told, and it has always been my ideal to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in the name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first told me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
My sweet Gwendolyn. But you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yeah, but supposing it wasn't.
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
To speak quite candidly, darling, I don't much care for the name of Earnest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has music of its own. produces vibrations.
I honestly think that there are much more charming names out there. I think Jack, for instance, a wonderful name.
Jack. No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed.
It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would lead a very tedious life with him. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, you know I love you, and you have led me to believe that you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well then, I propose to you now.
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, darling, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I have to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does it. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that. Especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire at once. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It could hardly be a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. And while I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I confess I am somewhat bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes. I must admit I do smoke.
I am pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. But between the duties exacted from one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure.
I have a country house with about 500 acres attached to it, but the only people that seem to get any real income off it are the poachers.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I have a house in Belgrave Square, but it is lent by the year to Lady Bloxham. I can get it back at any time with 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham. I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. Are your parents living?
No. I have lost both my parents.
Both? To lose one parent may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both seems like carelessness. Who was your father?
I said I had lost my parents, but it would be near the truth to say my parents lost me. I was, well, you see, I was found.
Found?
Yes. Mr. Thomas Cardew.
Mr. Thomas Cardew? At what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own. And it was a somewhat capacious, large, black leather handbag with handles to it.
So you were found in a handbag?
Yes.
And in what locality did this Mr. James Cardew find you in this particular handbag?
Victoria Station. The Brighton line.
Victoria Station? The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I seem somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born or at any rate bred into a handbag, whether it handles or not, seems to me to display contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably been used for this purpose before now. It can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognizable position in good society.
I must ask you what you advise me to do then. I need hardly say I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly do that. I could produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I'm sure that would please you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a daughter brought up with the utmost care, to form an alliance with a parcel and marry into a cloakroom. Kindly open the door for me, sir. You will of course understand that any communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment.
Would you stop playing that ghastly tune, Algie? How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say she refused you? It is a way she has with people. She's always refusing them. I think it most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is all right. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother, however, is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but her mother is definitely one. She's a monster without being a myth in any case, and that's quite unfair. I beg your pardon, dear Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your mother, your relations in this way.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the slightest idea of how to live, nor the smallest intention of dying.
I haven't got any relations. Don't know anything about them.
You're a lucky man. Relations never give one money, nor give anyone credit. Even for genius, they're a sort of aggravated form of the public.
Besides, what does it matter whether a man had a mother or father or not? Anything in the papers?
Nothing. However, I am very much interested right now in a girl I have never met. Very much interested indeed.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't?
Well, I don't want to argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that is what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man ever does, and that is his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everyone's clever nowadays. It's become a public nuisance. I wish to goodness we still had some fools left.
We do.
What do they talk about? I would extremely like to meet them.
The fools? Oh, the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn the truth about you being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
One does not tell the truth to a sweet girl like her.
Why not?
Because it would give away too much.
I see. And what about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
No, Cecily is all right. By the end of the week, I shall have gotten rid of Earnest. I think I shall kill him in Paris.
Say a severe chill.
Are you sure a severe chill isn't hereditary?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. I shall kill him in Paris.
But I thought you said that the Miss Cardew was a little bit too much interested in Earnest. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, Cecily's not a silly romantic girl. I'm proud to say she has a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I will make sure you never do, and you are not to refer to her as Cecily.
I know what type of girl she is. I know exactly what type of girl she is. She is one of those dull, boring, uninteresting, intellectual girls one sees all over the place. I bet she's 39 and looks it.
She has to be excessively pretty and only just 18.
And have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Life is a question of tact. One leads up to these things gradually. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other that after they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go get dressed. Did you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew a time when you weren't. However, all right. I will drop by the Albany and then pick you up at 8.
What shall we do after we get dinner? Go to a club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
Then let's go to a theater.
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Then what on earth shall we do?
Nothing.
It is very hard work doing nothing. But then again, I don't mind hard work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
My dearest Gwendolyn.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children have to say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
My own one.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Bolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may become necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back until Monday. You may set out my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all of the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is a simple, innocent, charming girl. What are you so amused at?
Oh, I am a little worried about my poor friend Bunbury. That is all.
If you don't take care, Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that's nonsense. You're never talking anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.